So if he pulls a knife and you have some space, you always want to try to arm yourself, right? You don't want to go empty-handed against the knife. So he backs up, right? I go like this, and I go. Oh, that was pretty good, huh?
It's back.
Wow, I haven't done that in a while.
Good afternoon and welcome to FMA Discussion. This is episode 332, and today we're featuring Guro Burton. For those who don't know, Guro Burton's been on before, episodes 4 and 21, if I'm not mistaken, when I didn't know what I was doing. And he was so kind enough to come on there to kind of give my show a kickoff, and it was very nice of him. And that was more bio-related, kind of covered his background. This episode, really, we got a ton of questions in, so we're really just going to cover the questions. And before that, though, Guro Burton wants to talk about a few things, and then we're going to segue into all the questions we got in, which are about, I want to say 15 or so. So this show is going to be predominantly just him answering questions and all that. So if you do have questions, they come on the side in the comment section. I will try to get to them depending on the subject matter he's talking about, just so we don't break continuity as far as the discussion. If I can't get to them, please send me to them, and I can forward them to him, and hopefully he will answer those for you. If you do have some that you didn't get to me in the beforehand, or to Burton for that matter, and all that. So I'm so looking forward to this. Now I'm a student of Burton Amendment 2014. Basically changed my life in a lot of ways, just as far as confidence and believing in myself. And currently a rep on him. I think he's one of the smartest minds in the self-defense industry, personally. And if you do any of his programs, you'll kind of see that, and hopefully he's going to be talking about some of those today. So this is going to be great, long overdue. So without further ado, the man.
Hey. Aloha.
Hey there.
Hey, Dean.
So this is such a pleasure to have you on, and I'm just so glad, because I know you were a busy man. I'm so glad you were able to coordinate this. I mean, you know, I know you've gone through some trial tribulations. You're about to travel, and you got a student there, and so on and so forth.
And last night, Marcelo Garcia texted me and said, "Hey, do you want to train tomorrow morning in Honolulu?" Of course. So I'm still sweating. I just drove back, came in, took the shower, and I'm still sweating from the jiu-jitsu session with Marcelo this morning. But I gotta say, Guro Dean Franco is just, I think all you know, he's really amazing, but I think he's more amazing than you really know, because I know him quite well. And the dedication, I mean, what a martial artist. Like, dedicated to functionality, which I really appreciate. And what a pleasure to see how far you've taken this and done so much good for the Filipino martial arts community.
Yeah, and I appreciate everything, especially in the beginning, because ironically, I don't know if you were aware of this. I think I might have shared this with you. You were partly instrumental for this happening. And the reason being is you were so kind enough to have Dwight Woods interview me. So when Dwight got an interview, I was thinking, like, man, you know, this seems really fun. And there's a void missing in the FMA community. Nobody is doing this in the FMA community. So with all due respect to him, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, would you mind? I want to ask, I insist on asking you first. You know, you've been doing this." And he was fine with it and all that. So had that been for you, I'm not so sure I would be doing this. So indirectly, you have that influence.
Well, and you may be mad at me for that too, but
no. I mean, mostly this has been wonderful. I mean, it does come with some unpleasant side dishes, you know, but for the most part, it's really been it's been enjoyable. Yeah, I mean, the question mark, I guess, is how long do I go? So, you know, so that's going to be the question mark, you know. But all that though, so folks, yeah, so if you didn't catch the intro, and that, oh, I really like that defense you did against the moving knife there, because you never shared that with me.
Which
You
one?
know, the
Oh yeah. Oh yes. Come on.
You know, you've been holding back on me on that one.
I know. I got to hold a few things back. You know, the nunchucks are you just carry nunchucks with you everywhere. That's my thing. You know, and when I travel, I tell them, you know, it's emotional support nunchucks. And so that's how I get them on the plane.
So forget the emotional support dog. You're taking the nunchucks.
Right to the nunchucks. Yeah, that's how I get them on the plane.
So,
oh my gosh,
that's too funny. I had to play that when I saw that. I'm like, oh my goodness, that is funny. But okay, so folks, we got a bunch of questions. Before we get to those questions, Guru Burton wanted to talk about some things. So what I have down from yesterday is that you would first like to talk about the mentality of elite athletes and its relation to functionality and strengthening mindset, dealing with failures, and etc. Am I pretty accurate there?
That is correct. That was the first thing I wanted to talk about. And so I'm very fortunate that, you know, I've pursued it also. I've made it happen. When opportunities come up, or I try to create opportunities and then do what I have to do in order to go train with the best of the best in whatever discipline it is. So I lucked in to training with Guro Dan Inosanto. I started with him. And the original Kali Academy, where people would travel across the globe to spend a week or 2 weeks training there. The house I grew up in was a 1.5 miles away from the original Kali Academy. Okay. So that definitely was lucky, lucky dog. And but one thing I really learned through that, it became very apparent years later, is that he, you know, best of the best, the elite level, right? He's up the very elite level of martial arts, and training with the elite level people. It's not just, I mean, a lot of times there's technical differences, but it's just this mindset of being your very best, doing what you need to do to be your best, making the sacrifices necessary in certain portions of your life in order to pursue your training. And that's what I've really learned. So the point I wanted to make it short here, is that when you have a chance, go find the best people, you know, that top level of whatever art you're training in, because it's going to make a difference. Those people you're around, it's the mindset is, what are we going to do to make ourselves as good as possible in the shortest period of time? You know, what are we going to do? What's going to make the difference? Go from this level, you know, up to this level. And that's what you find with combat athletes, because the combat athlete is just really concerned with winning their next match or winning their next tournament. And although it's not purely self-defense, the focus is so sharp on, I don't have time to play around with things that I'm never going to use in the tournament. Yeah. And how are we going to practice? That's the other thing I want to talk about, so I'll just blend it in here, is the training methods. How do you practice? This is the key point. You can practice for hours a day and actually make yourself worse. You can do certain drills in a certain way that actually make you a worse fighter, because the drill is so contrived that you get used to being in a certain range where you shouldn't be comfortable there. And you could spend a lot of time, and you can start doing things where your partner is so cooperative that it's never going to really happen like that. So the point being, when you put yourself around those top level people, they bring you up. You know, there's that notion, which I find to be true, that the people you associate with, they're either going to bring you down to their level or pull you up to their level. So we're always trying to find those people to associate with that can pull us up and make ourselves the best that we can possibly be. This last weekend, this isn't Filipino martial arts, but this last weekend I just got back from Las Vegas, which I don't like Las Vegas, but the ADCC, not my cup of tea, but ADCC, the World Championship of Submission Wrestling. It's only every 2 years. And
Okay.
I went, and I get to see a lot of my friends, and I hadn't seen them in 5 years since it was in Finland in 2017 last time I went to it, because I coached Barrett Yoshida, and I coached him in 4 of these world champion events starting in 2003. And so you meet all these people, and just the discussions you have, and it's all about how do we win
Okay.
within the rules. And that's when we go to Filipino martial arts, we can say, well, I want to do this for the fun or the health of the body. Like I do Sinawali. I was out there on the beach doing it this morning. Almost every day I swing the double sticks. It's really good for your body, for your mind. And so that's winning in the health department. When we're talking about combat against another person who wants to hurt you, we want to make sure we win that, right? Not engaging at all, being able to go home without engaging whatsoever, you win. That's the best way to win. But if you have to actually do the physical confrontation, you want to make sure in my estimation, the way I look at it is I want to spend my time practicing things that are going to help me come out on top. So that's where I find being with those elite level people, combat athletes also, even though it's not exactly self-defense, but that mindset carries over, and you can apply it to your Filipino martial arts or whatever else you're doing.
Wow. Yeah. Because I remember seeing some of the pics, you with those guys and all that. And that's just, like the creme de la creme, I mean, as far as that's just, yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, and obviously, that because gosh, you had Marcelo living there for a while with you, which must have been awful. I mean, I don't know how you,
terrible.
I don't know how
terrible.
you endured that. I mean,
I don't know how I did it. And now he went and moved here permanently. Now he's here permanently, and like I have to go to Honolulu and roll with him for rounds, and it's horrible. It's horrible. Terrible. Oh yeah, I'm so lucky. I mean, I do. That thing, luck is when preparation meets opportunity, or opportunity meets preparation. So I'm prepared, and I often try to make the opportunity. The first time I went to corner Barrett in Abu Dhabi, it was the ADCC. It was in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Okay, he's going down there. He didn't have a coach, and a certain Brazilian prominent guy threatened his life, said, if you ever come to Brazil, you're not going to leave. We're going to kill you. I mean, charming. Oh, it's beautiful. Beautiful. That's one part of the culture. So I went down there. I paid my own way. I paid for everything, the flight, the hotel, the whole thing. I paid my own way to get down there, and I made sure nothing happened to Barrett. And once we got there, it was clear that the other guys were totally happy to see him and all that. But anyway, the point being, that was an opportunity that I said, man, I'm going to go ahead and pay for this trip and pay for the whole thing. And I did it, and it was just so valuable. And it's changed certain things in my life over the years because of that. I met Marcelo there for the first time. And then the second one, I went to ADCC, is where I really started talking to him. We became friends. So anyway, the point being, when you have opportunities, or you see, God, I'd really like to go train with that guy, and wherever it is, in New York, or maybe somebody in Europe, wherever it is, I really want to train. Well, go do it. In the future, whatever the costs are, this is what I found, whatever the costs are right now, in the future, you look back and go, it didn't really hurt me financially, because, most of my life have been very poor, but I'd save up money, and then I'd take a trip, and I have like almost no money left. I'd save up money enough to take a trip. I'd take a trip and train, and those are just so valuable. So that's really what I want to say about that, is find the people you want to train with and go train with them, even if it's a big sacrifice, because in the end, you're going to be so much better off for it, and it will stay with you for a long time.
Yeah, no. That's how we met. I mean, like, you came to New York, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going there.
That's perfect example. And now we've been friends for how long? And
2014. So
yeah, and it's just been a great friendship, and training and the whole thing. I mean, it's just been wonderful, because you said, I'm going all the way down to New York, which you had all kinds of excuses to not do it. Plenty. I can't do it because of this or this or this or this. But in the end, you go, I'm just going to go do it. And I think it's been great for both of us.
No, no, absolutely. I mean, and much to the people who are watching this, it can be life changing. I mean, 100%, and so your next thing you wanted to discuss was JKD functionality and its relation to FMA.
Yes. So I'll make this brief again because I could talk about this for a long time, of course.
That's okay.
I think something that people don't understand is Bruce Lee went from Wing Chun to Jun Fan Gung Fu. So Bruce Lee's method of Gung Fu that he was modified Wing Chun. Then he took it a little farther yet, his Jun Fan Gung Fu. And then eventually he turned it into Jeet Kune Do. He said, I'm going to call my art Jeet Kune Do.
Okay.
What was it that made him change and go, not Jun Fan Gung Fu, now it's Jeet Kune Do? What was it? It wasn't the Wang Jiakman fight when he had a challenge match and it took longer than he wanted to, and he wasn't thrilled with his performance, even though he beat the guy up. That was a spark. But what really happened, according to him, according to his writing, he wrote a letter to Wang Shengliang, is that once he was in LA and he started putting on equipment, putting on the headgear, gloves, body protectors, and the whole thing, and sparring, what he said, all out, that he said, his quote was, I had a lot of prejudices, but I found out they were wrong. And so that's how he found out. He actually, what did he do? He went and said, hey, let's actually just fight it out and see how much of this I can apply. And he found out a lot of things he thought he could apply, he couldn't. And that's what made him start changing. And then he was doing fencing, which made a huge difference. Guess what fencers do? Helmet, body protector, foil or FA or saber, and let's go try it out.
I think they do that straight line thing too.
Oh, yeah, exactly. So much is from fencing in JKD. But really the overall point being it was the getting in the water and learning to swim instead of doing what he called dry land swimming, where you're doing a lot of the strokes and you're practicing techniques, but you're not really in the water. And that is the key thing, but we can do it safely. Remember, he said all out, and there's nothing replaces when you go 100%. Like with my, I think some of I was one of the original Dog Brothers, Lucky Dog, and I was doing it before it was called Dog Brothers, right? It was just Eric and a couple other guys at night in Asano Academy, and he tricked me into doing it the first night, and then I just kept doing it because it was such a mind-blowing experience. Oh yeah, he totally tricked me. I mentioned he was here recently. I had hosted him for a seminar, and we talked about that.
Now we use these clubs.
Yeah, right. It's like, oh, here, yeah, that's Eric. But going all out, the thing when we spar with the soft sticks, it's really important, and we do it in a way we don't trade. We always imagine we don't have any protection. And if we get hit in the helmet, that means we just got smashed in the face with a real stick. Or I often say, treat it like a sword, where you just can't get touched. You just a little this with the sword, and that's it. It's all over. But this is a great training method. But as good as it is, going with the heavy rattan with very little protection, all out, 100%, you have the fear factor also. And the fear, you have to overcome the fear to say, okay, I'm going to step in, I'm going to try something. I'm going to go for that target instead of going, I see the target, but man, I don't want to walk into one of those shots. Yeah. So it's going all out. But again, back to JKD relating to Filipino martial arts, that idea of actually trying it out, that's what really took Bruce Lee from here all the way up, plus his, the way he trained and studied. But training methods, especially the sparring, everybody that does it in Filipino martial arts is better off. Just don't do it where you're training. You're standing there just hitting the person and they're hitting you. I highly suggest when you do your sparring, just say, hey, let's treat these like swords, and I just don't get touched at all. That's when you get a fine sense of distance. And that's when you start doing setups and engaños and really playing that game of I'm trying to, as Grandmaster McGlinty, just a wonderful person who the house he grew up in, when he was growing up, Flora Villabrail actually lived with them for a while when he moved from the Philippines there. And Grandmaster McGlinty's father was a master of Eskrima. But what Grandmaster McGlinty often says is, Kali is the art. It's basically, how do I hit you without getting hit?
Right. And
that's it. That's what you should do in your sparring. How should I hit? Not how can I hit you more times than you hit me?
Yeah.
Which, that doesn't make any sense. But how can I hit you without getting hit at all? So those are the points I wanted to just bring across. The training method, and it can be fun. You can take it to that level where it's scary and it's dangerous. You can get injured. So I'm not telling you to do that. I'm just saying that when you do that, the learning is so compressed. You learn so much more in a short period of time, and you really have that courage check to see, if you have the courage to step in.
No, you do. It's so true though. Like, when I was younger, just the rattan and all that, cost your knee, surgery, cracked rib, cracked elbow, you know what I mean? But I can honestly look back and just say that experience alone definitely gave me a highway direction to what I do today, as far as like keeping it clean, and what I encourage my students to do by virtue of you as well, so yeah,
That's
absolutely.
it. Yeah, you spar so well. You just spar really, really well. And I see your students spar so well. That's just a testament to you of just keeping it real. To me, that's keeping it real.
Yeah, and so much to you. Thank you. Okay, third thing you wanted to talk about was the knife 2-on-1.
Yes.
My favorite subject.
Oh, yes. Knife defense. Okay, run. Number one is run, and really run. No kidding. If you train correctly, you really go, oh, yeah, you do want to run, don't you? It's not, it's so hard. Number two, if you can't run, and again, a lot of people will see me doing, a video of me doing some sort of knife defense, and they'll say, oh, you should just run. But yeah, if your loved ones are there and you're protecting them.
I know, ethical, right? Just gonna leave them to the lions.
You're right. It's like, okay, as long, whoever's fastest is gonna, survive this, and whoever's not, they're gonna get it. And so there is a time when ethically you need to actually engage. But first, it's escape. Second is you arm yourself, and I would suggest mainly a chair. If you pick up a little knife, the guy's got a butcher knife, you have to be so much better than the person to survive that. To
get beyond that.
Yeah, Edgar Salizzi used to say, if you are much, much better than the other person in the knife fight, you live, he dies. If he's much, much better than you, he lives and you die. If you're about the same, you both die. And that's not good odds. So use a chair, you use something, arm yourself. Of course, if you have a firearm, that would be the best, as long as they're at a distance where they're not charging you to stab as you're drawing. So there's a time you have to go empty-handed against a knife, even if you're armed. And the main thing, what I'm just going to say is, it's clear. You control the knife arm. You control the knife arm. And there are different ways to do it. But here's the thing that still people are missing. That outside 2-on-1, when you get outside the person's arm, you're holding like this from wrestling.
Russian tie.
The Russian tie. So many people are doing that now. But it's not just controlling the arm. What we really are trying to do is control the knife, right? That's what we're trying to do, is control the knife. The way we control the knife is by controlling the knife arm and being in a position where they can't switch hands. Because if I'm in a position where I grab the arm like that outside Russian tie, and they go like this, and they whoops, I'm going to go here. They switch hands and come back in. Guess what? There it goes. You don't have knife control of the knife anymore. So if you can remember this, please, when you're doing the knife defense, it's control the knife. And the way you control the knife is by controlling the knife arm and generally turning your back, which seems like a terrible idea, but it works. You turn your back so that the other person cannot switch hands. That is how you control the knife. So just make sure when you're practicing, the first drill I do in knife defense is I say, get your position, and your partner's going to try to switch hands. You just keep them from switching hands. That's all we practice, so that immediately the first thing to consider is don't let them switch hands, because you'll make your entry somehow. I mean, we have good, precise entries, but in a real situation, somehow you'll get in there instinctually. You'll want to grab that arm, but you want to train yourself to keep your chin down so you don't get choked with the other arm, but keep your chin down, turn, keep them from switching hands. That's the thing that I see people missing now.
There's more. I agree with you, and there's more. I think, you know, and this is just from doing these interviews, being just exposure. There's a diluted aspect to this community, and I'll just be honest, of what they think they're going to pull off real time, real speed against somebody attacking a knife based on what they do. And sometimes I don't know if it's necessarily their fault. If they've been given this handed down to them and they haven't tested it out, you know what I mean? They're taking what they've been given from their instructor and they're believing in that, and they go forward. You know what I mean? Until they've been exposed to weaknesses, or they were exposed to a better method. You know. But as far as your program, I'm just amazed that, and you mentioned there going to be somebody else, that I'm the only one that's graduated and seen it through. And I just can't, I'm amazed by that, just by just how absolutely functional it is. And the fact that you go into some of the ground positions with it. You definitely cover the pre-violence section. I don't get it. Why? I really thought that was going to be a hot item for you, and as well as it should be. And I'm just really surprised that more have done that program. I don't know.
Yeah, it is curious that I mean, I worked on this program for 15 years at least, of just pressure testing, and I don't know if it's because it doesn't look like a lot of the Filipino martial arts. So it's like, oh, I don't want to do that. That looks like wrestling or something. Or if people actually start trying it, they have such a failure rate at first that they're like, oh, forget it. I'm going to go back to my other thing without resistance because I don't fail all the time. But, you know, the more you do it, you get better and better and better at it. And yeah, you know, it's not easy. It's never easy. But I would rather know the truth and offer people to experience the truth for themselves, because the whole thing is every individual, you don't just learn the technique, everybody tries it against pressure, against fully resisting people safely, but against someone fully resisting, you pad up and all. But that's where you find out, like, wow, this is really hard against somebody going, unless you have there are a bunch of things you have to account for, like the forward pressure and the following them, coming in so deep on them, being more aggressive than they are, because they have such an advantage with that knife. You actually have to be more aggressive, but controlled aggression, not just flailing. Know what you're doing. You go in and you stick with them. You know they're going to pull back and move away, so you account for that, and you curve, and I mean, there's just a lot to it. But so far, I've had 7 people that either I've taught or they've learned under people that I taught. 7 people that have encountered a knife, a full-on attack, and they've all survived it so far. So hopefully that keeps going. The last one being a little less than a year ago, a couple of days before Thanksgiving, when one of my guys, police officer, you know, somebody jumped out from behind a tree and stabbed him in the chest with a giant knife. Thankfully, he had the plates on.
I remember you telling me that.
Yeah, I mean, so, and then he was able to go in. He saw the glint of the knife because it was dark. He didn't even know what happened. Glint of the knife, and so he charged, got the 2-on-1, and ended up taking that knife away. So,
thank God. Yeah, I remember you.
How would I feel? No, if one of my students goes against a knife, or myself, and I end up getting stabbed all over the place, that's just a possibility. But if at least I know I train them the best I know how to actually train them functionally. And I didn't say, oh, you know, let's just do all this stuff because it's really cool and fun. If you want to train for movies, that's another thing. But there's an art aspect, but I think a lot of that art came more recently with people playing around with a lot of things. But anyway, I just personally, this is just for me, I personally want to make sure everything actually works and that I can do it fairly well. And that's where I just put all that sparring time in and have my students do it too, just like you do.
Yeah, I mean, even, you know, but you're completely honest. I mean, integrity to yourself, honesty to your students. You're not saying this is coming out 100% of the time. You're saying, hey, this is what is giving us the highest percentage under the most resisting opponent and all that. And I think that's all you can do, against empty hand, against knife. And I think you've covered that well. So, but much to your point, I think folks who do it and they just see the difficulty in doing it, especially like when I was doing it, it was fine because I had that back before, doing it and all that. But if you're new and you're taking stuff and you have to put it aside and change your mindset, perhaps that could be difficult for some folks, and the failures might be overwhelming for some folks, if I'm guessing,
Yeah, at the beginning. But here's my thing, when I see people teaching all these fantastic things that I used to teach myself, I definitely taught those for a long time before I understood and actually practiced with resistance, is, I said, how are you going to feel if you teach this to somebody and someday they actually face a knife and they don't know what to do in a real situation? They have no idea how to handle a real situation where guys just come in so aggressively and charging them, they're not going here and feeding you just right and giving you just that, not too much pressure and going with you. So, and I want to be clear, that knife tapping, all that knife tapping, there is very good application for the knife tapping. Really, really functional. But you're not going to go receive, pass it yourself, receive, pass it yourself. That's a longer conversation. But there's actually very, very good where you're attacking that arm coming in. So there's, it came from a very functional method. But then in the end, I don't just tell the person, I have them experience it themselves. Because when you experience it yourself, then you're like, oh, okay, that's where the real understanding comes.
No, well said. Yeah, and plus, like you mentioned that, like I think the initial tap, you clear the arm to draw, access your weapon. I think there's something there, but but using that as your sole thing for moving knife, the thing I never said, okay, I'm going to take this. I could get 2 on 1. I'm going to pass over there so it can come back to me. That was my difficulty with it. But one thing to clear the arm drag to access, and great,
Exactly, right. Or it's coming this way first, and you go here and you shove them away, and you can draw whatever weapon you have, or in the old days the sword. I mean, very, very, very functional. I'll just say, let me tell you something about Tatang Illustrissimo, and this is indicative of how the Filipino martial arts, I think most of the Filipino martial arts actually were. We're training in Manila, and if you don't know, those out there don't know, I had the good fortune of, in 1994, I spent 3 weeks training with Tatang, and then 2 years later, I went back for a couple weeks and trained with him. So we're doing all this stick and sword and stick and dagger and knife and all that, and I asked him one time, I said, do you do empty hand? And he says, oh, yes, I do empty hand. I said, oh, great. Could I see some empty hand? I wanted to see how it was, like boxing based, or how it looked, or how he dealt with punches and all that. He goes, okay, yeah, I'll show you empty hand. So he goes, here, and he hands me a knife, right? So the concept of going empty hand against someone empty hand just was so foreign. Like, why would you do that? Everybody has a knife. I mean, the only reason you go empty hand is because you dropped your knife somehow. Or like you said, you're going to use it and access a weapon. But it wasn't, they said, oh, if you want to do boxing, you do boxing. But, the empty hand was against weapons. So I just found that very interesting.
Yeah, I remember you were telling me that, and like, we empty hands. What the heck are you talking about?
Yeah. Why would he throw a punch at me when I have a knife? Yeah.
Okay, so now, if you're okay with it, I guess I will just kind of dive into the questions.
Yes, let's go. Thank you.
So you did get a couple from Instagram, so I thought maybe we would just get those out of the way.
Great.
So I'm going to just jump here in Messenger. All righty. So
I'm going to say too that we got so many, I don't think I can get to all of them. And I'll try to make the answers very concise so we can get to as many as possible.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah. Okay. So this is from Philip. Staff, please. Similarities and differences compared to other battlefield colleague programs. The staff you just started doing, and I'm right with me, right? Or have you had it going, or?
Well, I've been teaching portions of it for a long time, and I'll show it every once in a while. But actually going through the whole program, which is all written out now, Guro Dean Franco is the first one actually going through step by step through the whole program. And I always do that sort of thing before I bring it out to everybody. But the difference between staff and other battlefield colleague programs is it's the same structure. So again, we were talking about training methods earlier. The first thing we talk about is the sparring. How are we going to spar this safely? And then the levels are broken into the different like 4 basic levels, and they're based on the type of sparring. The first level is hand only sparring. You're only trying to hit each other in the hand. Second level is hand and head. So you can hit the hand or the head and your partner does the same thing. Third level is hand and leg. Fourth level is free sparring where you do everything. And so the structure is the same because it works so well, and to develop people very quickly, because that isolation sparring, instead of just throwing them in there and having everything available, it really pays to go isolate this. And guess what? I know I've heard people saying, yeah, at Richardson, he really came up with this good way, this isolating thing. And I learned that from Guro Dan. He used to have us like do knife sparring with rubber knives. And sometimes the head wasn't in because we didn't have the helmets, but he'd say, okay, hand only, hand and leg, right? And go up to the head, but don't hit. So hand and head. Then he would say point up versus point down, right versus left, all these different. So you covered everything and you could isolate it. That's all from Guro Dan. And I'm sure he's not the only one that did that, but he's got a very brilliant mind. And he was a PE teacher and coach and athlete and amazing athlete, football player and track star and such. But that's the thing. The difference is between the staff and, let's say, stick, is that if you handle the staff, it's usually a greater diameter than a single stick. That's one thing. Number two, because it's so much longer, it is so much heavier. So you have to deal with that heft. When you hit with the staff, it may not look like it, but when you actually hit a target or you get hit, you go, wow, this thing packs a wallet. I mean, there's a lot of power. The thrust, because you're thrusting with 2 hands, is extremely powerful. And then there's some other things you have to be aware of. Imagine if I have a stick, right, I can go here and here. I can make my short X's, no problem, right? And especially somebody's going to say I'm going with a single stick. They try to hit me at an angle 1 and hit my hand. As that stick's coming in, I can drop my hand underneath and then I hit them in the hand. So I evade the hand hit them in the hand. They hit me a backhand angle 2, same thing. I evade and I do that hand hit, right? Okay. With the staff, if I'm here, I can do that on the angle 1 coming in here. But when they go angle 2, I can't, because the end of the staff will get stuck in my body. I can't just turn it over. So there's some limitations that way as well, just from maneuvering the staff, that certain limitations compared to single stick. So that's the main thing there with the staff, and it's really fun.
Yeah, I'm enjoying it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the next question, and this is from Instagram. I'm not sure the name. It says Ace, but how to incorporate weapons and striking into BJJ training? You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?
I don't know. What's BJJ? What is that?
And incorporating weapons into...
No, weapons. Why would you? That's ridiculous. Who would do that?
Why would you think of that?
I still get strange looks about all that. I will say the best thing to do is you get a training knife, and specifically something small. There's a man named Matt Clanton who recently developed this small little trainer. It's flexible and it's kind of sticky. It's tacky a little bit, just the material. And so you can stick it inside your gi pants or inside your shorts if you're going no gi, and it stays in place. So as you're grappling and rolling, it stays in place. So I'd say the main training method is to stow a training knife or a training pistol, never using a real one, of course. And then anytime during the roll, it comes out. And the reason that's the most important, and of course, there are a lot of techniques as far as how do you disarm a knife when you're starting in the ground? What are the things you have to do? You know, for example, if I'm on my back, and people sometimes look at me doing, I'm on my back, have somebody in my guard, and I'm doing knife defense. And they said, gosh, why would he do that? Why would you pull guard when the guy has a knife? Well, I wouldn't. But if you're struggling with your 2-on-1 against someone bigger and you trip and fall, you can end up on your back and you still have the knife arm. You better make sure they don't switch hands. So that's why we use for those who do jiu-jitsu, a spider guard. Put your right foot in their free arm biceps to keep them from switching hands. Yeah. Things like that. So, but the key thing is you stow it, you roll, and it comes out at any time. That trains you to expect a knife and to look for the draw. We don't want to look for the knife. Oh, it's a knife. I better do something.
Amen.
Too late.
Yeah, right now. I mean,
right? We want to look for the draw. We want to look for the cues. They're pulling their shirt up to, you know, so that would be, I would say, of all the things, that would be most important, is just stow it. And then it's ingrained in you to expect and look for the weapon. So if you get into something on the street, you don't go, oh, he's stabbing me, I better do knife defense now, because you're going to do what you train, right?
Hey, you know, I think I was kneeing him. I wasn't looking down, and now he's stabbing me.
He's stabbing. Maybe I should deal with that now. Yeah.
But you know, it's funny. One of the things, among several things I've gotten from you, from like little pointers or kind of catch phrases, what have you, is that whole thing in you know, whether it be via clinch or ground. I mean, when you see them reach in pockets, like I said, they're not giving you money. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, hey, you know, this is your lucky day.
Hey, he's going to give me something. What's he going to give me? A hole in your abs? Yeah, it's really true, right? They're reaching their pocket. They're not going to give you some money. They're not going to show you their ID.
So that to me, I always like, because, you know, exactly, like, if they're reaching, you know, it's not going to be anything good.
Nothing good. And, you know, there's a saying, hands kill, right? If you don't see those hands, oh man, you better assume a weapon's coming out.
Yeah, like I tell you, another thing too, that before we'll get on it, because I know you got time limit here, is, you know, that whole thing. But I referenced, like, also you touch upon, like, you're going to town and clinch, man, and you're not monitoring those hands, man.
It's a huge difference in the clinch, like our Clinch for the Street program. Again, the primary difference in the street, if you go from sport jiu-jitsu to MMA, you have to change the way you position yourself, because you have to account for the punching and the elbows. You have to account for striking. So you can't just put somebody in your guard and lay back while they're sitting up, because they're going to hit you so hard. They're going to drop elbows on you. You have to keep them close. You have to monitor to make sure they're not going to hit you hard. They're going to hit you, but not hard. So it's debilitating. When we go from MMA type training into self-defense, you have to change your positioning again to account for the weaponry, because you have to monitor those arms. Or in the clinch, you have to this is what, for those wondering, that's what I was talking about. You have to monitor the arms, so you feel. If you go on the neck clinch and you're firing knees and you start feeling punching in your midsection, and then you look down and you see the bleeding, which I have a video from Thailand where a guy tried to rob somebody of their phone. The guy fought back. The defender grabbed a neck clinch, and he's throwing knees. And the other guy starts punching him in the stomach. And after he took a few of those, well, he punched the other guy in the stomach a couple times. And then he looked down, and he's just bleeding out. I mean, it was so bad. Wow. And then the guy, and you could see he went into shock. And then he expired for sure. But
Here's a story you'll appreciate. One of my students went to go spar with some guys, and so they're sparring around, and and so they're doing knife, and so this guy closes, puts my student in a clinch, starts kneeing. My student's just like, hey, you might, well, my students are very polite, respectful. He goes,
yes, of
hey,
course.
hey, hey, you might I just want to show you, what's going on here. And the student's like, wow, thank you. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
See, that is such a good, well, when you're respectful like that, and then the person like, oh, you're trying to help me here, aren't you?
Yeah, right. So he felt that, like, yeah.
I mean, it's a whole another thing. That's why number one is avoid the confrontation if at all possible. Just avoid it. And remember, if there's someone smaller than you, someone it's like, why is this guy picking on me? Clearly, I have an advantage over this person. Why would they pick on me? It's because they have an advantage. Years ago, many years ago, there were these guys. I ran a little weight room for the Parks and Recreation in Culver City, California. It's way back when I was just out of college. And I had a bunch of guys in there, these young, rollicking, big, fun guys, and they happened to be Cuban. And they were just so much fun. And they were out late at night on the freeway in LA, and they're all big from lifting weights. They're really good size. And they said that there was a car with another Hispanic group, not Cuban, in the car, and they were small. And the car pulls up and gives them some dirty looks and all that. And they look at these guys, and my friend said, we looked at them like, are you kidding? We're going to kill these guys. They were so much bigger and stronger. So my friends pulled over, and the other car pulled behind them and stopped. And as they were getting out, my friends were getting out of the car, they saw the rifles coming out of the other car. That's why. And they're small, but they had the rifles.
Yeah, right. And they literally equalizer. Literally.
Yes, they knew they had the advantage. That happened to me one time. I was driving the car and late at night in Carson, California, my hometown. And anyway, it's a long story, but stop at a stoplight, and the guy pulls out a rifle and points it at me. And that was very pleasant. Very pleasant. One of those, another good thing for my martial arts training. Go, man. Weapons happen.
Oh my God! I would have forwarded. Hey, thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for the reminder. Thank you so much. Oh gosh.
Oh man, that's tough. What was I gonna say there? Okay. Well, here, can you, just for sakes of time, like we are at, I mean, no rush on my part, but I know, so it is officially 5:52. So,
okay.
How much more time do you think you have?
Can we go another 15 mintes or 15, 20? Is that okay?
It's really up to you.
Let's hit some of those other questions. I'll see if I can do them quicker.
Hey, it'll be an excuse. We'll just have to bring it back.
Oh, darn. Horrible.
Okay. This one should be pretty quick because, should be quick. This is from Lee Richardson because it kind of is tapping into about the knife stuff. Okay. What are your thoughts on the fact that your knife defense course seems to be steeped in grappling techniques rather than more traditional looking FMA techniques? Disarms aside, how did you get to this? What was your approach? How long did it take to get there? Are there any major distinctions for you that you discovered during your course of developing? You kind of went right through this, so you could probably just breeze through this.
Absolutely. Okay, the answer is yes. Okay, next question.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
No, thanks for the question. That's a great question. It was the scientific method of just what happens when we actually do it. So give somebody a training knife and say, stab me as many times as you possibly can. Don't hold the knife out there for me. If I start to grab it, if I start to grab your hand, don't stop for me and let me do stuff. I want you to fight at 100%. And we'll put some padding on so when I'm slamming my forearm in, it's not going to hurt you and such, but let's do that. And over time, I mean, you'll find if you just take somebody that doesn't know anything and you do this to them, they will get to that 2-on-1. They will find it very quickly.
Yeah.
But then it's what do you do from there? That's what took so much time. And actually, if you look in Filipino martial arts, there are Filipino martial arts, who is it? Roberto Labaniego, who unfortunately passed away last year, a grandmaster that I spent a lot of time with. He would do this, and he would grab with 2-on-1, but he would turn it and then he'd disarm right away. You didn't quite have that forward pressure and all, but I'm just saying that there was 2-on-1 on there, and just a natural thing. But really the method was trial and error over and over, the scientific method of, I have an idea, let me try it under full pressure, didn't work, or maybe something worked, and then just adjusting. That's why it took so many years to actually get it to where it was. And so most of the holes are covered. But and I think, like Dean was mentioning, in a lot of the Filipino martial arts, the whole idea is you are armed, there's a sudden attack, you just need to get him out of the way to draw. And then all these other things came up with the disarms and such, because those disarms mainly came from sword fighting. And when you're in sword fighting, if you cut the person, even if they're almost gone, right? They're almost gone. If they just take their sword, right, and go flick, and that tip hits you in the eye, that is a terrible, terrible injury. So they'd come in, get a hold, cut, and then a quick disarm, because the person's hand is very weak at that point. They're highly weakened. When we go against the knife, chances are you're not going to weaken them too much. Maybe you try to headbutt them. Maybe you try to punch them on the way in. I found that is a really low percentage. But it's possible. A person could be threatening you, and you just go bang, and you hit them quickly, and you debilitate them. Makes the disarm a lot easier. But I'm going to assume, if I'm going to make an assumption, I'm going to assume that the person is fully there, that I have to try to deal with that, and they're not debilitated. So that's why that 2-on-1. But again, you look back at old texts from Europe, from like Germany.
Oh my God, in the pyramids.
Yeah, they're 2-on-1. They're grabbing a 2-on-1.
It's a natural gross movement. Somebody's trying to kill you. You are going to go to a gross movement of self-defense, which is negating, I mean, it's
exactly.
Just,
a natural human instinct. That thing's hurting me, I'm going to grab it to make it stop hurting.
Exactly.
Good question.
Okay, next is from Joseph Harrison. In what ways can mixed martial arts or any other art system or style benefit from practicing and knowing FMA?
Good question, Joseph.
There's part 2, but if you want to go with that first, okay.
Okay, we'll do that one first. When I was training Chris Lieben, when I was his head coach for 3 years while he lived in Hawaii, UFC, and I would have him knife spar. Chris tended to be very heavy on his feet. He had footwork and he knows his stuff. But when he actually fought, his general thing was heavy on his feet, not a lot of head movement at first, and really very powerful punches, especially his overhand. He was southpaw. And so I wanted to get him a little more mobile. And what I did is I made him knife spar. And he didn't want to at first, but then he found it was fun, and then he saw the mobility. And so just the knife sparring, it gave him a lot more mobility. And then I would have out in the thrust, I'd have him parry and try to move his head at the same time, or he'd be going here. So that it's very useful. And then the fact that when you're going with the knife, you don't have to load up much on the punches. You don't need full body turn, so that it's, you're here, and it's quicker. So his eyes are adjusting to a higher speed, which means when you see the punches coming in, they come in a tiny bit slower and you can see them better. So definitely knife sparring for me for footwork, mobility, and just training the eyes to perceive quickly.
Yeah, right. Overall enhancing perception and reaction, right?
There you go. Wow. You should have asked Dean that. Yeah, that was a much better phrase. That was great, Dean.
No,
No, that was really good.
I give my students a steady diet of that until they get sick of hearing it. Okay. Not all FMA systems are created equal. How can the interested or beginning student discern which FMA system is best for beginning an FMA to establish a great foundation? Good questions, man.
Really good question. So my point of view is, first of all, what are you doing it for? Are you doing it for the movies? Are you doing FMA just to move your body and keep your joints loose, and you're just like, I want to do this as an activity for health reasons and to sharpen the mind, keep the mind working? Or is there an element of self-defense involved? Do you want to actually be able to apply it? The problem is, even if people are doing the drills and all, you can tell them, this isn't really good for fighting. This isn't going to help you so much for fighting, but it'll develop some attributes, or it's going to develop this or that. It's it's the art, whatever you want to say. They're all going to think it's for fighting. They're always going to think they can actually use it for fighting, regardless of what you say, unless they have fighting experience.
Gotcha.
Right. So I would say first you find out what they want to do. If one of their goals is combat effectiveness, guess what? You have to make sure that style is doing a lot of sparring, safe sparring, and again, sparring where you're not just trading. Wouldn't you agree there, Dean?
I 100%. I mean, and plus your whole message on functionality, right?
Yeah.
Sparring.
If you're about functionality, that functionality word again.
What's that word keep coming up? Huh?
Keeps coming up. It's funny how that just keeps coming back.
Keeps going full circle. I wish it would just go away, huh?
Right, it'd be so much easier. Gosh.
All right. Next is from, I'm just kind of going in order here. Okay. From Ray, and I believe Ray is one of Maestro Ray's students, Australia.
Okay.
Love to know more about your experience with GM Illustrisimo and KI. What defines BJJ for the street to you? So, I guess maybe one or two experience or whatever. And what defines BJJ for the street for you?
Okay. So to make it brief, my experience with Grandmaster Illustrisimo was, he was older when I was working with him, and he was just very kind and wanted to share. I know when he was younger, he didn't want to share, because why would I show people my tricks that I use to keep myself alive, right? Why would I do that? But when he was older, he definitely wanted to share, and he shared very openly. Same with Grandmaster Tony Diego, who became the Grandmaster, Master Christopher Ricketts. They helped me, and as fast as I could learn and do something to their standard, they give me something else, and then they give me something else. They were just so generous, and just, gosh, and I got to videotape it all. So I have all this video of this.
You and Brandon Ricketts got the gold, huh?
Yeah, and Brandon Ricketts actually has much more, and
I've seen
when he's younger, right? You were mentioning that to me.
Incredible.
Yeah. So yeah, Brandon has the best library by far. So it was just a great experience. But real quick, the first time I worked with him, it's like, man, I'm very familiar with most of these techniques because Guro Dan had shown us a lot of different things, and so I'm familiar with these techniques, but there was something different. And I just was pondering, and then one day, as I'm watching the videos again and again, it occurred to me that Tatang was always intercepting. If you hit an angle one's coming in. Instead of going block, check, and hit, or block, check, and come this way or whatever, he would always hit. As you're starting to hit, he would go straight in and hit and turn it into a block. So he was intercepting all the time. You start to hit, he would thrust and hit you with the thrust before the blow is coming. He'd parry and he's always intercepting. Yeah. And what was the question about BJJ?
Yeah. Okay. So the question was, And what defines BJJ for the street to you?
To me, is that there are weapons involved, and we are training specifically with extreme self-defense in mind, not a grudge match, not fisticuffs that happen to go on the ground and we keep doing it. We're talking about dealing with someone who's trying to murder you or your loved ones, and dealing with that situation. So one, we account for the weapons and we position ourselves to account and even try to stop the draw from even happening. If somebody has a knife in their belt or in their pocket, which they often carry like that, or a pistol, most criminals, do you know what kind of holster they tend to use?
None.
None, exactly. They put it in their pocket or they put it in the waistband. Sometimes when you lock your guard, a closed guard around someone's waist, they cannot access their weapon anymore. But the whole thing is we're dealing with that situation. That's really what defines BJJ for the street. But it's still training like BJJ. We're rolling all the time. We're not just doing techniques. It's all rolling based, just like I was rolling an hour and a half ago. We're just rolling, and that's how we get better.
Okay. Well, I find another question, just a quick one from me.
Oh, great.
You're training with these, creme de creme fars, BJJ guys, Marcelo and all that. Have you introduced them weapons, and if on the ground? If so, what's their take on it? Do they appreciate it?
Not going to put words in their mouths, but Marcelo sure has enjoyed it. I'll just say he's had a good time, and we've done the standing also, some of the knife defense program, and tell you, when he does get that 2-on-1, man, it is what a grip. Hard to break that grip.
All those years of.
But of all the people I've ever rolled with and all, Egan Inoue has an amazing grip. It's like sticky. That's the only way I can. It's so sticky, and he thinks it's from all his years of swimming and paddling in the ocean, for surfing and such, just pulling. But then Marcelo is definitely the strongest grip I've ever felt. When he decides to lock on, it's just so strong. But but definitely those. The people, Egan, I play with him all the time before my last surgery is on. I go test things with Egan. Like, who do you want to test something with? Well, somebody who's a world champion in jiu-jitsu, a world champion MMA guy, incredible athlete, extremely strong, highly intelligent. Let me work my stuff against Egan. And if it works somewhat against him, it's going to work against almost anybody. So that's how I test things.
Some people use different percentages. I go 75 or around there, but I mean, obviously margin of error, but the guys that know what's coming, or they know what what you're doing, or they're countering, because out there against the bums, it's going to come out pretty high. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay. This is from Adam. Okay. Let me just say, his is kind of long. Let me just see. Let me just scroll down. We got one from Mark here. I'm aware you're not a fan of kicking when there are weapons involved. Any exceptions?
Yes. Good one. So one, maybe someone physically can't grab very well, and you just a front kick or a side kick, something like that. That may be their best bet to make some space and run away. I'm not really a fan, but here is a good exception. A lot of times when someone's going to draw, they tend not to draw with one hand. They tend to use the other hand to pull their shirt up, or they reach in and open their pocket up. It's generally two hands. One is clearing the way, the other one is doing the draw. Okay, same with firearms. Well, if someone has a pistol or a knife, let's say a knife right now, and they're stowed behind, guess what they're going to do to open that up? Yeah. Now, my question is, which arm do you go grab? Do you grab his right arm or his left arm? Which one has the knife? We don't know. Right. You go and grab the right arm, and maybe he's a lefty, right? So you don't know. This is a good time to kick him in the chest and knock him back. And you could kick him in the groin. Maybe that's going to work. I'm not sure. but kicking someone hard slightly above the sternum, if you can, will actually knock them back physically. Just a physical reaction, which is, it's like, oh, it's kind of a high kick. Yes, but you can kick them in the stomach and maybe bend them over. But the idea is we want to make distance. And so if you get somebody doing this, that's the time for me is just give them a really strong front kick to the chest. If you're skilled at it, you can go side kick or back kick or whatever. But that's a great time to throw a kick. That's a good example.
No. Okay. I'm trying to okay, here's one from Adam. I do. Okay. Also, when blade systems like Piper, Piper, what's that?
Piper.
What is
Piper's
that?
so awesome.
Like Piper are out there showing how street attackers, gangs, prisoners actually use a blade. How can arts like Kali Silat compete in a weapon-based system and counter from that?
Yeah. So first of all, Piper, we have to realize Piper is designed to go knife against empty hand because it is a criminal system. Now, there are times that you would be justified using a knife against someone who's empty-handed. If you're much older, you're debilitated, there's more than one person, there are different ways, a woman going against a man who's trying to assault her, etc. So there are times, but usually Piper is designed for going against an empty hand. So if we take Kali and Silat empty hand against it, it is just hard. I'm telling you. All the stuff in the Knife Defense for the Street program, all the principles, forward pressure, getting in there, 2-on-1, all these things. Piper counters most of these things just with the structure they use and the basic technique they use. I mean, it's so evident that this art came from actual use, right? And Dean is leading in America. He's one of the leading instructors under Lloyd. And I mean, Lloyd, gosh, you should watch Lloyd do this stuff because it's amazing. I mean, Dean and I have trained in this quite a bit and we practiced a lot, but Lloyd moves so amazing. You really got to watch him move. But that's just something I would say when it comes to empty hand against, and then when it comes to weaponry, it's a different thing because most Filipino or Southeast Asian weaponry arts are based on going against somebody with a weapon. And actually, this just came up, I'm not for it, but I shot a whole program on comparing Filipino martial arts and Piper knife. Filipino martial arts knife and Piper knife. And I might release that next week. Or maybe before I leave, I might be able to. We'll see. But I might be able to. But it's really interesting. It's an interesting study.
Yeah. I mean, it's like much you said. I mean, it actually, like you said, counters to 2-on-1. The fact that I'm going here, you go to 2-on-1,
There goes. Yeah, you see that, everybody?
Disappearing,
It's
a nightmare. It's an act. And then the shield hand,
Yeah, that stops the penetration. When the penetration to go in, forward pressure, whoop, that stopped. And they're going, and
I know.
It is highly, highly functional. And I highly suggest you learn it because if you understand this, again, that'll be another level of, oh, he's got a knife. I think I will do my best to get out of here. I do not. I'll just go running. I'm just going to disarm that. And,
I don't think so.
Don't think so.
Okay. Well, in fairness to you, it's almost 6:13 and but 1:10.
Do we do one more? How about one more?
Okay. So
thank you.
Sure. Adam. Okay. So this is Adam's first question, which
Thanks,
is
Adam.
Yeah, he had a good one there. If Bruce Lee's art in JKDC is a street fighting science, why haven't a large percentage of every one of its practitioners adopted to the teachings of someone like Tony Blauer, learning psychology of the street fight from awareness, avoidance, dialogue, diffusion, and aftermath?
Okay.
Not a good one.
Good question. Now, who's this guy, Tony Blauer? No.
Who is that guy? Who is that spear
Who's that guy? Have you? I don't know this guy. No. Yeah, this is a very good question. So I would say, and let's even skip the Junfon JKD or whatever, but just say martial arts in general. I think a lot of times people, okay, let's talk about the JKD crowd. There are a lot of people go, this is JKD, it's in this little box, and that's all it is. Even though the symbol, the writing says using no way is way, having no limitation is limitation. And people go, well, I'm going to just limit it to exactly what Bruce Lee did in this time zone. And that's all it is. And there's nothing better. We don't need anything else. This is the best. So that's a contradiction to me right there. But as far as learning things, yeah, what you think that's a contradiction, Dean?
I'm going to have to agree with on that one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We're in accordance here. But I would say a lot of people, what they're about is learning their art. Whatever their particular art is, whether it's a Filipino martial art or whatever, they want to learn their system or style of it, and they're happy being in that little world. Instead of saying, hey, let's get this whole thing about the whole self-defense. What happens before the fight? What are all the mental things you go through before a fight, which are basically, generally, wait, is this really happening? And if it is happening, what am I going to do? And if I'm going to do something, when am I going to do it? You know, these are the things that are going here. These have to be practiced ahead of time. That's why we practice these scenario games. So we get our own rules of engagement ahead of time. So when if an actual situation happens, you're not going, you're trying to figure out what are your rules of engagement? When do you start? But Tony, and he helped me so much because so much brilliant insight and research, and man, I highly suggest anybody who hasn't studied Tony Blauer's material to do so, because it will really help you better understand the psychology of the fight. Have you ever met him, Dean?
Oh no, I've had him on twice, and I'm a huge fan. Just the whole thing of the biological response, creating the airbag. I just think there's just such great stuff around that. Yeah, I use the spear a lot. I use it. I mean, anything from tackles, double leg. I mean, to I just think there's so much value in it. Yeah, and he's a fan of yours. You know, yeah.
Yeah, we've known each other for a long time, and I really respect him. And I believe in honesty, and in Silat, we have the dive entry, right? Dive entry is like this. It looks very much like the spear.
Yeah.
Tony didn't get the spear from Silat. I'm pretty sure he didn't. So when I was writing my Silat for the Street book and doing the program, but in the book especially, I knew the dive entry and I used the dive entry, but actually Tony's research on the spear and his development of the spear helped me better understand the dive entry, like much better. I had a lot better understanding and appreciation for the dive entry. And so I actually wrote to Tony and said, hey, I want to mention you in my book. Is that okay with you? And, he
said no.
Appreciative that I actually, yeah. And so I just mentioned that Tony made me understand it better, and you should really look into his stuff too. So he's great.
It's funny, going back to kind of paralleling what you just said, far as the dive. Off your dive, what really works well is, and I'm sure you maybe experienced this, after, of course, dealing with the threat, the punch and all that, immediately making that quarter for this little shift and just spearing him away to cross blast.
Yeah,
works pretty,
so effective. I mean,
it works really, really well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's so gross motor and simple. It's based on the flinch response. Instead of doing this, you do this. I just, the amount of training, and especially he's training a lot of police officers and FBI, all this, who they're not martial artists. They're not like we are, who will train ourselves to be able to perform a large breadth of techniques under pressure. They just need something that works, and they can do a little training, and they'll have a lot good results from it. So yeah, it's just brilliant, his approach.
Oh yeah, no. I'm a fan, 100%. Yeah. It makes sense that you two get along very well. So So, okay. So
Yeah.
what I didn't get to,
What?
I had a few questions, but I mean, which is the least of worries. There were questions from Alvin, Sammy, Jacob, Glenn, again, a couple others. But would you entertain a part 2?
Yes, let's do it so we can answer all the questions and get some more questions. And
yeah, I'm sure more will come in. Yeah, sure.
And I think next time maybe we can talk about this concept of like training against a resisting opponent, like sparring or something.
What's that? I'm not familiar.
I know, but I'm just listening. I read something about it somewhere. I think I saw an Instagram post or something. So I don't know. Maybe we can talk about
training against a resisting partner to better further your journey and to be realistic. God forbid something happened to you one day. I mean, is that kind of where you're going, or?
Oh, now that you said it, yeah, definitely. Oh my gosh. Hey, I just want to say to everybody, thank you. Gosh, I have so many friends out there and have so many wonderful people. I'm going to be in Cincinnati, Ohio. I think it's the 3rd weekend of October, but look up Sean Sutton, S-E-A-N, Sutton, and I'll making posts, but I'm going to be there in less than a month. I'll be in Italy also, teaching in about 3 weeks or 2.5 weeks.
That's rough, huh? You have to go
hard.
there vacation first, and then
it's terrible.
The struggle with you is real, huh?
Yeah, and you go over there, you have to eat Italian food, in Italy. It's just, oh well. I will suffer. I'll make the sacrifice for all of you.
Such a trooper.
Yeah. Take the hit.
So I mean, realistically, I know you have a lot on your plate. Just so, just a general idea to let the folks know here, like realistically, when do you think part 2?
You know what I'd like to do is, could we do it in 1 month when I come back? So when I
absolutely
I leave Monday, come back in almost exactly a month, a little more than a month maybe. And then I have 1 week before my next go around with another surgery to make this thing I'm doing here permanent, which is awesome. I'm very thankful for that because I feel great, better than I have in a long time.
So glad.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So yeah, maybe that week I'll have I get back on a Monday, and I think my surgery's on the following Monday. So maybe in that week we can
it's like
do part 2.
Early November?
Yeah, the surgery is November 4th, so maybe early November or very late October.
Okay, all right. I'll touch. Okay, so later. All right, no, perfect. And thank you so much again for coming on. Really.
Oh gosh, it's such a pleasure. Can you tell I love this stuff? And again, all you guys out there that I get to interact with, and guys and gals, people I get to interact with, I just so appreciate you. You ask questions, it makes me reanalyze things, and it's just a wonderful thing, this martial arts journey. So thanks everybody. I highly appreciate it. I'm just so grateful I get to do this. Grateful, of course, all my instructors just led the way. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Actually, I don't, because we're not meeting till you get back for more because I need to get those bow staff skills, So.
Yeah. We'll get this. We'll make sure we do one before my surgery, because after the surgery it'll be a while before I can do that. So we'll do that.
Fair enough.
Awesome.
All right. Well, hey, in event I don't talk to you, have a great trip. And,
thank you.
And we'll definitely be in touch when you get back.
All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thank you so much, Dean. Yes. Aloha. And thanks for being such a great leader and representative, Dean. You're for all the martial arts, Filipino martial arts, just all the martial arts you do, from all these different instructors and such. I mean, you're just such a great example, and people should follow your lead and just train, test it out, keep it real. So.
All right. Well, I appreciate you as always. Thank you.
All right, Dean.
Okay, you take care.
Bye-bye.
Oops, I don't know what I did there. Oh, I know what I did. I got you. I hit the wrong button.
No problem.
All right, that wraps up 332. Wow, what a good one, huh? Talk to that guy all day. So yeah, he will be back out. So for those of the questions I didn't get to, part 2, we'll we'll get to those. And there was Jacob, Glenn, Alvin, a few others. I promise that we'll get them back on and we'll get to those. I did see some comments coming through on here that I couldn't, just because I didn't want to stall him and get to as many questions as humanly possible. With regards to Burton's knife program, yes, somebody asked about it, and yes, it is online. You can get the digital download, however, or you can get the actual physical DVDs. There is actually, Burton is the only one who teaches it. And as mentioned myself, I just can't believe others have not done this course in its full entirety. But be as it may, yeah. So I highly recommend it. And again, go on JKD, his website, and you can find it there. If you do have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer those for you about the program as well. I have a couple students under me that are doing it, and they love it. So if that helps. All right, folks, we'll see you next time.